In today's equity index futures markets, let's take a look at the NASDAQ 100 futures as we saw a nice reversal this morning. Strength right out of the gate. We saw selling pressure initially. We did see them lower, but they went green pretty quickly today relative to the other major index futures markets. It took them much longer till they did finally get positive late in the day. At least some of them did. NASDAQ firmly in the green all day and reversing 2 days of selling from last week and pushing back up over 8,800. Currently right around the 8,808 level. So that's the top end of the range for the day. And when you look at some of the driving factors, I think you have to point at the leadership. The tech names that led last week came back into favor again today. Amazon certainly, I think, was one of the big leaders coming out of the gate after opening lower. We saw that go higher quite quickly, and couple that with Apple finding strength, Facebook, Microsoft regaining their footing, and Tesla being probably the biggest driver in the NASDAQ 100 index, influencing the NASDAQ 100 futures as we saw Tesla up sharply today. Also, I think the earnings cycle continues to evolve, and we're moving into the latter stages now for the earnings cycle, but there's still some significant amount of earnings this week. And with that, I think the digestion of last week's earnings are continuing to filter through the market. And when we do see buying pressure, the money does seem to flow towards those names of strength and therefore the tech sector. And when you look at the NASDAQ futures, they're certainly outperforming any other major average to this point for the year. Looking at the trends in place, I want to point out that we did not take out the April 21st low in the NASDAQ futures. We went down on Friday, tested a little bit lower this morning initially, but held, and now it looks like we put in a higher low. So from a short-term trend perspective, that would be a positive, and certainly pushing back over 8,800 is a psychological number that I think can help propel maybe this momentum further. Couple that with, as I mentioned, just the sheer magnitude and strength of the NASDAQ 100 futures this year relative to all the other major index futures. NASDAQ 100 futures up on the year again today after today's price action, up better than 1% today, and again, up just under 0.5% for the year. And we did see the other major averages get back to unched or slightly green today or higher on the day. But when you look at it relative to the NASDAQ futures, certainly the NASDAQ futures have firmly outpaced the Russell, the Dow, and the S&P 500 futures year to date.